Hello everyone and welcome to the 6th ITS Australian Tracheostomy Patient and Family Forum. We belong to an exciting global community which allows us to share, connect and partner. In challenging times such as these, coming together as a community to share and connect becomes more important than ever. In fact, being connected to a community can be a powerful factor in maintaining and promoting our well-being during these difficult times. We thought it timely to explore and celebrate the power of the tracheostomy community in promoting well-being. This forms the key theme of this Patient and Family Forum, the power of the tracheostomy community in promoting well-being. My name is Lucy Bonacta. I'm a senior speech pathologist working with the Tracheostomy Review and Management Service, or the TRAMS team, at Austin Health in Melbourne, Australia, where I lead our Patient and Family Forum portfolio. I'm delighted to be hosting the Australian Patient and Family Forum in collaboration with the Asia Pacific GTC Patient and Family Committee and the tracheostomy team at the Royal Children's Hospital. I would like to introduce Gabby Chessels as well as Jenny Messer, who are our Asia Pacific GTC Patient and Family Committee leads. They are also Austin Health patient advocates. Jared and Sue Stevenson are GTC Patient and Family Committee members, as well as Austin Health patient advocates. The renowned Royal Children's Hospital has an exciting and well-established tracheostomy service. The Royal Children's Hospital is a founding member and lead paediatric site for the GTC. I would like to introduce you to the team. We have Dr. Jo Harrison, respiratory physician, Dr. Sarah Morrison, paediatric ear, nose and throat surgeon, John Kemp, respiratory clinical nurse consultant, and Sue Ellen Jones, respiratory clinical nurse consultant. We'll be hearing more from the Royal Children's Hospital patients and families shortly. We will start our session today hearing stories and experiences from tracheostomy patients and families overseas in the UK. We will then explore the exciting initiatives happening locally in Australia. In particular, we will hear from the Asia Pacific GTC Patient and Family Committee. We will then meet a number of inspiring and resilient tracheostomy patients and families through the Royal Children's Hospital in Melbourne, Australia. Lastly, we will review the Austin Health Patient and Family Forums, which are hosted in collaboration with the GTC. Let's now meet some members of our international tracheostomy community. First of all, we will hear from David, who is based in the UK. He shares his story and speaks of the challenges he faced when he had his tracheostomy.
I don't really remember the tracheotomy being put in place. Yeah. All I do remember is waking up and I couldn't talk, and then I was terrified that this had happened and it had gone and wouldn't come back. So the first time I spoke, it was just like a new world. It was like, and I didn't have a voice before, you know. Emotional time to be able to talk. That was the biggest, one of the worst things I know is when you can't go to the toilet and when you can't get somebody's attention quick enough. I know they're busy and everything, but it's so horrible. That's probably the most horrible thing that happened in there, is that you just feel really, it's not something degrading isn't the word, but you don't want to be doing it because you've got, you know, somebody's got to come in and clean you up and everything. It's just not being able to communicate. Maybe if you had a red board or something to stick up and said, I need something now. Well, yeah.
I said it would be casual.
Yeah.
Thank you, David, for sharing your story. These are valuable messages about the importance of having ways of communicating. It provides some really important information about the patient perspective for any healthcare professionals in the audience today. Next, we'll hear from Julie Gimblett and her husband, Carl. They're being interviewed by Brendan McGrath about their experiences while Julie required a tracheostomy.
Julie and her husband, Carl, to tell us a little bit about their story. And I'm going to first ask Julie just to tell us a little bit about how she first ended up with a tracheostomy on an ICU. So over to you, Julie.
Thank you, Brendan. In November 2015, I underwent surgery at a private hospital for a sleeve gastrectomy. The operation went okay, but I did have some problems, a lot of pain after it. So I was discharged from hospital 3 days after the operation. Approximately 4 days after I was discharged, I returned to the private hospital in quite a poorly state, where on arrival I was very quickly rushed to the Royal Stoke Hospital with a diagnosis of sepsis. So I was blue light ambulance to the hospital. The last thing I remember was the paramedics running through the A&E doors, and after that point I became unconscious. I can't remember anything else then.
So after that, so Julie was unconscious, and sort of she got taken into surgery, and I was told to return to hospital later that day to visit Julie after she had this emergency surgical procedure. On arrival, I was told that Julie was extremely ill and that she had a 1 in 5 chance of surviving the next 48 hours. So I was taken to the critical care pod where she lay. I could see that she was attached to a ventilator and wearing a mask, a full face mask. I was informed that a number of Julie's organs had failed and that her lungs had collapsed. I was then told that Julie was then left using the mask for a couple of weeks. Then the clinicians told me that Julie wasn't getting enough oxygen using the mask and that she would need to have a tracheotomy installed. When I saw the tracheotomy, I was very upset due to it seemed to be very sort of roughly installed, to be fair.
What about talking with your family? Maybe from your perspective, Julie, first, then I'll ask Carl what he made of it all.
So yeah, that was very anxious and stressful again, and very exhausting again, similar scenario, because you're relying on the lip reading. I desperately needed to talk to Carl about things about our finances, my job and employment. I was worrying, and I just couldn't do it, basically couldn't communicate, could we? And that was really, really stressful. I can remember thinking I'm going to have a heart attack here because I just couldn't get across what I needed to get across for me. And bearing in mind, I was almost in lockdown, you know, in my body.
Gosh.
So, yeah.
And how about from your perspective, Carl? I mean, it must have been incredibly frustrating to see Julie trying to talk, and were you able to understand her?
No, I couldn't do the whole lip reading thing at all. Just one of our friends who came to visit managed to kind of very easily read lips, and that was great for that one visit. But the rest of the time, it was between us, as Julie said, her trying to get over just very basic kind of instructions, etc. And
I think, Julie, you mentioned that you managed to get a little bit of voice going with a little electrolarynx, a little voice box.
I did.
Yeah.
Yes.
Was that the first time you were actually able to say something then?
Yes.
Yeah. And how did that feel?
Oh, it felt great actually. The nurses, well, the clinicians got me set up with it, and Carl was coming to visit, and I said hello, and you were really shocked.
Yeah.
But it does take an awful lot of. It was lovely, wasn't
energy,
it? Yeah. It takes a massive amount of energy to use that box. And if you're in critical care, and there's a technique, it's quite deep where you have to thrust the sort of your voice and project it. So, but it was fab. It was really good.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Can I ask you a little bit about eating and drinking? I imagine when you first came around, you probably had a little tube in your nose, and we were doing a lot of the feeding that way. But as you started to recover, do you remember wanting to eat and drink? And
Oh, I was desperate. But, I mean, my condition made it a bit unique because I was only allowed to have a sip of water anyway an hour, but it wasn't painful swallowing at all. I couldn't feel that. But that first sip of water, shall I say, was like it was nectar. Honestly, it was it was like amplified the taste of it. It was like honey nectar, and I literally couldn't let it go. That I was like, don't take the cup away. It was so delicious. So yeah, but it was gorgeous. Yeah. I wasn't.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
So, have you got any top tips or advice if we're a bunch of healthcare professionals listening to this? Any top tips for people looking after patients like you or families like you where there's someone with a tracheostomy?
Yes, I want to go through these.
Yeah, you can do. Yeah.
So, I mean, one thing we thought about was encouraging staff to take the opportunity to take a quick basic course on lip reading. You know, there's lots of them on the internet. You can sit and just spend a couple of hours getting used to the basics. I think that'd be really useful for anybody who spends a lot of time supporting patients with trachees, let's say conscious patients with trachees. Also, to just try to enable anything that sort of clinicians or support staff give to the patients and the families. Just try to sort of be aware, try to make sure that they work, basically, that they work. And perhaps just spend 5 minutes just saying to them, listen, you know, this is how you switch it on, this is what you need to do. And just to give them a bit of confidence and that kind of support. Next, just try to be as honest as possible and clearly describe to the patient and the family what the kit is, what it does, why it's there. You know?
Yeah.
Perhaps even a laminated checklist just for the clinicians to talk through. You know, this is what the patient needs to know.
Yeah.
This, and this.
Yes. And for me, when I was going through the weaning process, I would have liked to know to see what was going on, and I understood what was happening. That would have been so. You know, I need to get my head in the right space for that and understand it.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, the tubes went over my left arm, so that's really prohibited. I don't know whether there's some way in which that can be sort of scaffolded or something off, because that does impact your physio. So
also the Julie's tube kept popping out. And it then made a really harrowing kind of squealing noise. So when I was sat there, I'd sort of, you know, try to grab the tube and sort of reconnect it and things.
Yeah. So that was
okay. Well, look, it's absolutely a privilege to hear these insights from both of you, both as a patient and as a carer. And as healthcare professionals listening to this, you know, it really brings it to life, the sort of things that we should be focusing on. And the thing that's really struck me from talking to you is just that sentiment about your first drink. You know, it's often something that we don't always think about, particularly when we sit at the end of the bed swigging a cup of tea talking about your care. So that's a really important take-home message. So look, from all of us, thank you ever so much for giving up your time, both of you, to share those insights. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you to Julie and Carl for sharing your experiences so honestly. There are so many important messages for us in that video, so thank you again for that. These stories and experiences provide the GTC with lots of food for thought as we work towards the best possible care for every tracheostomy patient. The GTC Patient and Family Committee is an essential part of this. And next we have an update from the GTC Asia Pacific Patient and Family Committee. So our leaders of the GTC Asia Pacific Patient and Family Committee are Gabby Chessels and Jenny Messer. This group are in the planning process of working to initiate an Asia Pacific Tracheostomy Support Facebook group with the aims of connect, share and partner. The GTC Asia Pacific Patient and Family Committee understand that living with a tracheostomy can be isolating and would like to provide a safe environment where we can learn from each other, support one another and grow together. This Facebook group would be a forum for sharing stories and insights. We look forward to hearing more about this exciting initiative as it unfolds in the coming months. Another important team that provides valuable support to tracheostomy patients and families in Melbourne, Australia is the CATS team, the Kids and Tracheostomy Management Service at the Royal Children's Hospital. This team provides a multidisciplinary approach, which includes medical teams such as respiratory, ENT and general paediatrician, respiratory clinical nurse consultants, nurse care coordinators, clinical technologists, dietitians, social workers, and also the complex care hub.
I remember being devastated. It was a complete surprise to me.
I was very, very upset about it because I knew it would change our lives forever and I didn't know. I felt like, how am I going to handle it?
It was quite overwhelming at the start.
The first time that sort of a tracheostomy was mentioned was fairly horrifying.
You've got no idea about what's going to happen and how your life is. Someone's going to get that snow globe and just shake it so violently that you're not going to know which way the world is.
Once I realised that it was okay to be upset and to be worried, I kind of felt better about it. I still won't say I felt fabulous about it. Who's going to feel fabulous about that?
A lot to take in, a lot of information, a lot of things that we had to learn. One thing that was really difficult was the isolation that you feel, and you feel like, you know, you're the only family in the world that's going through this. Once we took her home and we were able to spend all that time with her, you know, everything just fell into place.
And then I'd see her smiling and be so happy and I'd think, well, she's happy. We're at home. She's alive. We're here.
His smile is beautiful, so just every time he smiles it's great. Well, not every time. When it's 3 o'clock in the morning it's not so great.
We were able to look after her. We could hold her whenever we wanted to. You know, she wasn't hooked up to any tubes or anything at home, so it was just like any other baby with a few added extra bits.
Knowing what we know now would be to talk to another family about what's life like.
They know exactly what you've been through and exactly what you're going through.
The people within the hospital do a phenomenal job of telling you clinically what you're in for, but not necessarily the practical realities of living at home with a child with a trachea.
Diego and the girls go to the tracheostomy Christmas party here and meet other kids with tracheostomies, which I think is an amazing thing to do as well for all of them to get together.
I get to meet other people who are like me, and then I know that I'm not the only one like me, and it makes me feel happier.
A lot of it was just about, you know, normalising everything as much as we could.
It becomes the new normal.
You know, the tracheostomy has given Amalia a life and has allowed her to, you know, be a normal kid.
Really joyful to have had him be able to participate in kindergarten last year and school this year with an aid.
There's things that we do differently, but, you know, we don't let it hold us back either. Like we do as much as we can, the same as, you know, any other family.
Very powerful messages there. So eloquently expressed here is the value of meeting someone going through the same experience as you are, of sharing insights and ideas. And this was a key driver in the development of the next initiative, the Austin Health Patient and Family Forums, which are hosted in collaboration with the GTC. Starting in 2017, TRAMS Austin Health, in conjunction with the GTC, have hosted 5 patient and family forums. Personally, I feel fortunate to have been involved in a number of these forums. However, it's important to acknowledge here that these forums have been led by Tanis Cameron, TRAMS Manager, Senior Speech Pathologist Prue Gregson, Clinical Nurse Consultant Christine Nee Chong, and also previous TRAMS Clinical Nurse Consultant Christy McMurray. These have certainly been a team effort, with special thanks to the dedicated clinicians of the TRAMS and Victorian Respiratory Support Services teams. The goals of the forums are to learn together as a community of tracheostomy patients, families and clinicians, to hold meaningful conversations that promote education and wellbeing, and to share stories, challenges and insights to support and encourage others. Each forum is attended by past and present tracheostomy patients, families, carers and clinicians. An important part of each forum is to connect in with the global community. A video from a member of the GTC board is played at the start of each session to welcome and link us in with our global community. Forums met in person from 2017 through to 2019. In 2020, COVID-19 necessitated the shift to an online format. Moving to a Zoom platform for our meetings has enabled us to connect in with the global community in ways that we couldn't previously do. By way of background, for people who may not be familiar with the forums, in 2017, we ran 2 Thriving in the Community with a Tracheostomy forums. In April, we shared stories and insights. We celebrated each other's successes through the Thriving in the Community with a Tracheostomy Awards. In December, we had a festive forum, which included live music in the form of Christmas carols. One of the focuses of the presentation was promoting wellbeing, and we shared insights and advice on promoting wellbeing when living in the community with a tracheostomy. Music often forms a key focus of our forum, and in 2018 we had a winter forum and we had West African drumming, which brought an incredible energy and lifted our spirits. Again, we shared our highlight of the 2019 was our 5th International Tracheostomy Symposium. This was a scientific meeting with an amazing program of speakers, scientists and researchers. Through this symposium, we came together for a patient and family forum with the theme, I am more than my tracheostomy, inspiring patient stories. As patients and families generously shared their inspirational stories and insights, the energy was high and we all came away with new learnings and ideas. In August 2020, the first online Austin Health Patient and Family Forum was hosted in conjunction with the GTC. This was Continuing Conversations That Count, a symphony of stories. This was hosted by Prue Gregson, Senior Speech Pathologist, and Tanis Cameron, TRAMS Manager. We explored the magic of music with keynote speaker Benjamin Northey, who is Chief Conductor in Residence of the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra and Chief Conductor of the Christchurch Symphony Orchestra. The Symphony of Stories continued through with a number of patient and family speakers, exploring themes such as wellbeing and mindset. I'm delighted to be able to share a video of highlights with you now.
Now it is my great privilege and extreme honor to introduce a guest speaker that we have. Benjamin Northey is the Chief Conductor of the Christchurch Symphony Orchestra. He is the Chief Conductor in Residence of the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra, and he has kindly agreed to join us today.
You know, I've chosen to speak on the magic of music because I strongly believe that music is the most extraordinary of the art forms. You know, the effect of certain combinations of sound waves on the activity of our brains is truly miraculous. And when you think about it, Music is a very abstract art form, much more so than visual art or literature. It's a language all of us can understand, and yet it has the ability to affect each of us differently. For example, some people might hear a piece of music which instantly makes them cry, and others might hear the same piece of music and have a completely different reaction. But for each of us, our interactions with music are some of the most natural and profound experiences of a world which exists beyond our physical bodies. And for the time that we are really immersed in the experience of listening to music deeply, to be really connected with it, we are elevated to a new level of consciousness, and one with limitless possibilities. And it's this direct connection between music and our imaginations or emotions and our creative side which makes it such a powerful and liberating experience. It's what I love so much about the art of music. You mentioned also, Tanis, to the magic of music is its power to unite people, to bring them together. And it can do this in many ways. On a basic level, it unites the makers of music. There is something about our evolutionary humanity which urges us to collaborate together. And when a group of people gather to make music, it's an expression of humankind's ability to cooperate, to listen and respond to each other, to take joy from the creative expression of others. And this is what makes the large musical ensembles like orchestras so special. They are one of the best examples of human cooperation we have. Each member is reliant on all of the others to create something much more beautiful and powerful than they could have ever created by themselves. And of course, music can draw people to it like the Pied Piper. And we hear music being played in the distance. We're curious. We seek to see it, to discover it. And the gatherings of people at concerts of all kinds is testament to this. It's a profoundly unifying, because not only do we all inhabit the shared space of where the music's being performed for the duration of that performance, but we're all unified by our experience of the same thing, the music. And the most magical moments that I've had in performances come when our collective responses to the experience of music somehow fill a space with a special kind of energy. And in the great moments of classical music, the hairs stand up on the back of your neck, and we might even be overcome with emotion or inspiration. And we all feel it together in real time. That's what makes it unique. And that's also one of the great challenges of this time that we're living through, is that unifying power of live music has been taken away from us largely. The therapeutic healing powers of music still exist through recorded or online streamed performances. We've been doing plenty of those. But the live experience of coming together in large numbers and sharing a transforming experience are not possible for now. And I wanted to briefly mention, Tanis mentioned I'm the chief conductor of the Christchurch Symphony Orchestra in New Zealand. And that's been a 6-year journey for me so far. When I became the chief conductor in 2015, the orchestra was in the process of completely reinventing its relationship with the community and the city itself, with much of the area completely devastated by a catastrophic earthquake that many of you would remember back in 2011. The traditional venues for artistic experiences, such as the Town Hall Concert Hall, all of the venues across the city were significantly damaged and faced long-term closure for repair works or demolition. And the inner city was apocalyptic. I mean, it was utterly desolate after that earthquake, completely unrecognizable. And it's got parallels with what we're going through now. But in some ways, at least initially, it was worse. We're talking about no power, no running water, everything completely changed. And Christchurch arts organisations, and the CSO in particular, faced the prospect of closing their doors and waiting for suitable venues to be reopened or rebuilt, a process estimated to take many years, and that process is still going today. The people of Christchurch were deeply traumatised. They felt unsafe and vulnerable, particularly the young people. Their lives were changed forever, and huge decisions about the future had to be made. And it was in this climate of fear and hopelessness that the local orchestra, the CSO, made the bold decision to continue to give concerts. A temporary rehearsal venue was found in an industrial warehouse on the outskirts of town to base their operations. It wasn't very glamorous, I can tell you. But within weeks of the quake, the CSO began to perform in any venue they could find. They utilised local churches, school halls, outdoor spaces, and eventually struck a deal with the local Air Force Museum of New Zealand in Wigram to present their 7 Masterwork Series concerts in a huge airplane hangar filled with full-size military aircraft from the 20th century. They even had to move an enormous helicopter out of the way every concert to make room for the temporary stage. It was quite an undertaking. The musicians of the CSO not only performed these concerts, but they performed in schools, they presented workshops in aged care facilities, prisons, they shared interactive musical experiences with disadvantaged communities, they partnered with dance companies, libraries, and much more. And in short, they took music to the people and shared its transformative and healing power. And it wasn't long before the CSO realised that they had to start putting some more chairs in the Wigram Air Force Museum to cater for the extra audience members at concerts. When I arrived in 2015, which is 4 years after the earthquake, I could clearly see our audience getting larger at every performance. And not only that, but the local donors and sponsors of government had not wavered in their support of the orchestra. There was a sense that people desperately needed to be together, to share something on a creative level or a spiritual level even. They were craving the relatively normal civic experience of going out to a concert, and it was deeply meaningful and comforting for them. And I mean, can't we all relate to that right now? The venues we performed in all had their challenges. Wigram Air Force Museum in particular was absolutely freezing in winter, and it also was very loud if it rained. Amazingly, it never rained during one of our concerts. I'm not quite sure how that happened, but it was certainly cold, and we hired huge industrial jet heaters to warm the space. But these were so loud that we couldn't have them on during the rehearsals of the performances because we couldn't play music with them on. So I wouldn't say it was a very easy or comfortable experience for our audiences. It was quite the opposite, which is what makes what happened next so utterly remarkable. Because over time, we realized that not only had we doubled or tripled our audience, but we had quadrupled our pre-quake audience numbers. And this was an astonishing feat in a climate where orchestras are significantly challenged for audience numbers. The CSO had not only survived the catastrophe of the quake, but it had thrived. It had found new ways to do things. It had become a symbol of the courage, the ingenuity, and the resilience of the people of Christchurch themselves. And the orchestra had succeeded in reinventing itself and aligning itself with the values and circumstances of its city. It's an example of the unique ability of music to be the medium for something, to act in the service of something greater than itself. And I just think that Christchurch Experiences has a lot to teach us. It's very instructive in the context of what we're going through today as well. It's been my great privilege to have the chance to share my thoughts on the magic of music with you today. I sincerely hope that it may encourage you to explore some great orchestral music or music of any kind, really. The internet is a fantastic resource for this. You can start with Beethoven, for those of you who are dipping your toe into classical music, and see where the journey leads you. And it would be my hope that listening openly to music serves to enrich our own imagination as listeners and to ultimately nourish our souls. And I'm optimistic that through the miracle of human ingenuity and collaboration, it won't be too long before the magical and uplifting experience of a big live orchestra returns to all of our great cities and nations around the world as a uniting force for good. So thank you again for inviting me to speak to you today. I wish you all the very best for the future, and I hope to meet some of you in person in not too long. Thank you.
This is a bit of a favourite of mine. It sort of stems out of the growth of a very famous man by the name of Dyson, who invented the Dyson vacuum cleaner. And Dyson, as you'd well be aware, is now a multi-billionaire, but he didn't get it right the first time. It took 4,500 prototypes. That means he failed 4,500 times. But Dyson says that without failure, you cannot learn. And I think this is a really good lesson. If there is no failure, there's no capacity to learn from mistakes. And Michelle said very early on in our journey that one of the most important things was to understand that what we're going through was not something that was necessarily bad. It was just we had to adapt to a new normal.
The new normal, yeah.
And that new normal has been very important to us, and it changes every single day. And I firmly believe that if you don't have an attitude that accepts that setbacks are an inevitable part of recovery, then you can't recover. And I've stayed incredibly positive. I won't lie and say I've had my dark moments, I have, but I've stayed incredibly positive, because without that, you can't succeed. Without determination, you can't succeed.
Would like to say a big thank you to everyone who has been involved with making it possible for me to come home. I've just recently started doing story time for my nieces using my grid pad. I type up the story and then we video it so that I can send it to them. At least this way I can interact with them and they get to see me. Since being home, I've been able to enjoy time cooking with my carers for Mum and Dad. Sometimes my carers will join us, so it's a real family atmosphere, which is what we want it to feel like. They also help me make cards, and with my veggie garden and Lego.
I knew that, I had to get through a certain madness in my head and, break out of this depressive bubble that I knew that I was going to get myself into. But, it's a matter of perception, really, because, you can choose to feel depressed and go down that spiral, or you can choose to live life fuller than, it was. And, every time I get depressed or sad, I think about the fact that I only have a certain capacity of mental strength in my head, and it's what I choose to put in it that matters. And I choose to put in music, I choose to put in friends, I choose to put in people that I love. And then when I think about that, I have no more space to be depressed. So that's what I think about every time I do go down that spiral, because I am in control of what I lack and what I have in my life, and I choose what I'm grateful for. And after thinking about that, I don't feel so depressed anymore, and that to me is what's important.
Because it is life-changing, but in the end you are in control of how you decide to live every day. You look on the brighter side of life, things aren't too bad, and just move forward and it will spring you to something great. Yeah.
Some important messages from Benjamin Northey about the power of community in helping us make our way through challenging times. And hearing these insights from Larry and Michelle, Sally and Daisy really highlights the value of coming together and learning as a community. Prue Gregson and Tanis Cameron coordinated an evaluation of the patient and family forums to date after they hosted the Symphony of Stories in August 2020. We found that the forums have been very well received. 96% of respondents agreed that being part of a tracheostomy community and attending forums are an important aspect of tracheostomy care. 94% of respondents agreed that the aims of forums were met via the in-person Zoom meetings. A preference was expressed for twice yearly meetings. Interestingly, we found that we had a wider reach with the Zoom platform. So we had 130 people attend the Symphony of Stories live on Zoom, and 319 people viewed the recording after the event. So this is in contrast to approximately 50 people attending the in-person patient and family forums. The feedback that we've received will be incorporated into our future events. This brings us to a summary of today's session. Today we have celebrated and explored the power of the tracheostomy community and the impact this can have on maintaining and promoting our well-being during difficult times. We've heard important stories and insights from patients and family members overseas and locally, and I'd like to take a moment to thank every patient and family member who has enriched our session with their stories today. We have explored some exciting initiatives occurring across our region, including the Asia Pacific Tracheostomy Support Facebook group and the Austin Health Patient and Family Forums, which are hosted in collaboration with the GTC. The importance of support for tracheostomy patients and families living in the community cannot be underestimated, and certainly this concept of ongoing holistic community support was found to be a key theme in the pre-ITS6 survey, which many of you will have completed as you registered for the ITS6. This will no doubt remain a high priority for ongoing work in the GTC. As part of the efforts in this area and to keep connecting, to keep sharing and learning as a community, I'm thrilled to be able to invite you to our next Austin Health Tracheostomy Patient and Family Forum, which will be hosted in collaboration with the GTC. This session will be Continuing Conversations That Count, the Restorative Power of Nature. In recent times, there have been countless initiatives and research underscoring the value of nature in promoting well-being. Many of us can relate to this theme, particularly during these challenging times. We're looking forward to coming together as a group to explore the value in connecting to nature and the different ways we can do this. I am delighted to announce that the keynote speaker for this event will be Andrew Laidlaw, who is a renowned landscape architect. His work includes the Royal Botanic Gardens in Melbourne, Australia, and the Global Gardens of Peace. As always, we'll be hearing from a number of tracheostomy patients and family members. In this session, we will meet Sylvia Karma and her husband, John. They recently went on an amazing caravan trip to Queensland and will share their insights, challenges, and highlights of this trip with us in this upcoming session. This is a free event and is open to everyone. This will be held via Zoom on Tuesday, the 9th of November this year at 11 a.m. We would love as many people to attend this event as possible. Please register for the event on the tracheostomyteam.org website. Please contact the TRAMS department, trams@austin.org.au, if you would like to be added to the TRAMS mailing list, and you can be notified of any upcoming forums or events. Do note that the session will be recorded and available on the tracheostomyteam.org website following the event. I look forward to coming together again soon, to continue learning together, to continue these meaningful conversations, as well as to share stories, challenges, and insights. Thank you and take care.